Hey everyone, it's Andy, and today I want to make a video to talk about what happens when you get off the click. Okay, so if you're leading worship and you have clicks and tracks that you're using, this is such an awesome tool for filling out your band sound, of giving a more consistent sound from week to week, of helping in the teaching and training. But the downside is it adds complexity to what you're doing. And if you mess up, which will inevitably happen because we're people and we mess up, it's hard to know what to do. So we're going to walk through a couple things of what to do when you get off the click and some ways that you can adjust on the fly to keep worship going. Okay, so let's imagine that your vocalist comes in 2 measures early from your first song. They don't wait the whole intro, they just come in. Now, I know it's not always the vocalist's fault for not coming in at the right time, but let's be honest, it's usually the vocalist's. So they come in a couple measures early. What do? You could just cut everything, but then you're off. You don't have click, you don't have tracks, and it just kind of stops there. So if you use Loop Community, the Prime app like we do to play back our tracks in worship, one thing that you can do is you can fade out the tracks so that you don't have just this stop there. And you can keep the click going on so that you stay on tempo. The other thing that's really important during this time is if there's a way to mute the cues in the middle of that, that's really helpful because otherwise you'll be a couple measures early to every section break. So that's what I would suggest if you mistakenly come in a couple measures early. So let's imagine that you guys come in as a band not on the downbeat. This notoriously happens when you have a song in 6/8 and your drummer just always counts 4. So they hear intro 2, 3, 4, and they go instead of waiting for the 5, 6, right? So what happens there? This is a case where being off on the click is probably better just to cut everything and try and keep going off click. You could try and salvage it, but it's probably better just to cut everything in that moment. Okay, so let's imagine that your vocalist was supposed to come in, but then they didn't. They hesitated and they just didn't jump in. So there's a couple things you can do there. You may not need to cut anything at that point. You could use, if you're using Loop Community's app, you could loop a section or come back in on a downbeat there. Let me show you how that works. Okay, so I'm starting the song Build My Life. Intro, and as the intro starts, we'll play here. And this could be for a lot of different reasons. Maybe the singer didn't have their in-ears in, or their battery pack ran out, or anything like that. Let's say they missed this cue and they don't come in right there. Rather than cutting everything, what we can do is repeat this section. So there's a couple ways. You can hit repeat and just click on this, and it'll repeat back there. Or you can click on the section that you want to go to after we get to the end of this section. So we could jump all the way to verse 2 here or whatever. But this will repeat verse 1. Here we go. Back to the verse. Ready, go. The other option you could do is, if you see that the vocalist isn't coming in and you know where they're at, you could use your vocals to help kind of lead there so that they get caught up to where they're supposed to be. So most of these entrances, the hardest ones, are typically at the very beginning of the song. But let's say you're in the middle of a song, there's a longer instrumental, or there's a section break that's tricky that you end up missing. What do you do there? Well, if it's in the middle of the song, typically you want to try and keep going with whatever you have. If you can keep going with the click, fade out the tracks so that your chord changes aren't different. But if you're kind of off on the downbeat again, try and cut everything. Again, it always depends on the situation. And the best way to be able to go with that is to be able to try and communicate with your team as you're leading that song. So that's really important, why you need to have some ability to have eye contact with the rest of your team. And another way you can do that is by using a talkback microphone or a talkback feature. So Eli's got a video right up here that shows you how to set up a talkback microphone and how to use that. The final question is, do you ever just stop and be like, okay, we need to start over again? Of course, it always depends on the situation and the church and the atmosphere that you're trying to create. But I would say yes, that there are times where you may just miss an entrance to a song. And it's never, we always want to try and not be a distraction. We want to create an environment where people can enter into worship authentically. But sometimes you just have to admit, wow, we really messed up. We're going to try that again. This is typically what I'll do if we have a introduction that just really falls flat. We didn't even get the song started, but we may just need to stop and try again. We've had times too where we started the click, but we had a hardware malfunction where none of us could hear the click, and then some tried to play it and some didn't, to where we just maybe needed to stop and say, hey guys, sorry, let's try that again. Above all, it's really important to be authentic and honest. I mean, people know when things aren't sounding right and we kind of mess up, and it's okay to say, hey, sorry, we messed up. Let's try that again. I think it really helps create an environment of authenticity. And while tracks can be a really powerful tool, it also just creates another liability that we have to work with. And so having systems and communication in place to be able to deal with what happens when we make a mistake when we're trying to go together with tracks is really important. Thanks, guys. Have a good rest of your day.